I'd like to thank everybody for coming out here, Bein Hazmanim, before Pesach. I'm sure everybody has a lot to do. There'll be, Be'ezus Hashem, Li Neder, questions after a certain point in the shmuz, not during. Rabbi say we are confronted with a type of issue that probably most of you, judging by your age, have never seen in your life. I have never seen it myself. There are Rabbonim who have said, I'm sure you've heard them, say that they are literally embarrassed to have to speak about this topic. More than one and more than two have said that. I'm asking if anybody here ever had heard of any issue in Klal Yisrael, b'nagea to you or anything, that Rabbonim, no matter how poshut the issue was, no matter how simple it was, no matter how chomer it was, they used such a lashon that they are embarrassed to have to speak about it. It's a mud nazach, not one and not two. There are people that are saying it's a not a pella by them, it's a bizoyon that they even have to speak about this. There are issues of money and tznius and all sorts of things. And in my life, I have not heard such a lashon. Yet over here, a lot of people are saying it. Boy bisman, that at the same time, there are bachurim and yungalite that are saying, I don't understand why they're embarrassed. I have no idea what's going on. Nobody ever told me anything about this. So you have mamish mod nazach. You have some on michad gisa. You have people that are saying that it's so poshut that it's a bizoyon they even have to speak about it. Midach gisa. You have people also saying, I don't even understand why. Well, what the issue is, nobody ever told me about this. And the truth of the matter is, this is because this particular pirza that we're talking, and it's Zionism, is different than all the other pirzas in the world. Reb Chaim Briska mentioned that these Zionists, as opposed to the other people that try to shmad the Jews, they knew his lashon was exactly where to shoot their arrows at Klal Yisrael. Other people, there are plenty of shmatniks throughout history, but these people knew exactly where to shoot their arrows. Also, b'shem Reb Chaim, it says that a guy like Theodore Herzl, who was a mamish, the Chazon Ish said about him, it's in Maaseh Ish, that you can say on him Yamach Shemoy. He says in front of Freya, he holds it's not Kedai, they'll get upset, but that's the madrega that he was on. That he's a threat to Klal Yisrael. This Shegitz, this guy who celebrated Christmas and not Hanukkah, this guy who had an idea that he wants to shmad all the Jews meaning that they should all convert to Christianity. It's in his diary. That was one idea. Zionism was not his first plan. He had various other plans. This was converting the Jews on a Sunday afternoon in a church was one of the plans. So this guy is a threat to Klal Yisrael, and Reb Chaim said he's a threat because he's using Eretz Yisrael and he's using musogim that are dear to Klal Yisrael. And so we have something that is extremely unusual, this Zionist shmad. Now, Me'idach Gisa, people are here, and I'm sure that you're going to tell me nobody ever explained to you what a Zionist shmad is. I'm sure you've heard stories, or maybe you have relatives from back in the olden days. Your grandparents told you that they had grandparents who threw away their tefillin because of the Zionists and stuff, but that's not what's happening today, is it? No, the Zionist shmad is a different thing altogether, and this is what's goyim, this bizarre situation, where you have people that are michad gisa, mamish, it's a bizoyon for them to speak about it. Midach gisa, you have so many people that have no musug of what's going on. When I once, 5 years ago, when this same thing happened, so I told one of the Rosh Yeshivas I was talking to that this is the pshat in the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Emes nederes u'naorim pnei zakenim yalbinu." What's the connection between the two? So I said it's emes nederes, but it doesn't say emes nishtakach. The emes will disappear one day; it'll become hidden. Doesn't mean that it'll be forgotten. It means people who know the emes will still have it. It's just that the mikan ve'elech, the new people, are not going to have the emes. So what's going to happen is that the older people who already had the emes, just they're not going to forget it, are going to be around, and they're going to see the younger people who don't know anything about the emes, And the younger people are going to be saying crazy things, and the older people are going to know Dover Pashut, and it's mamish going to be Norim Pnei Zakenim Yalbinu. That's what it means when they say they're embarrassed when they hear people talking like that. That's just a word. But the emerson is, it has nothing to do with Bizman Hazeh, older people, younger people. It was like this even in Europe. I have in front of me a sefer, it's called Kol Yaakov, from Yid Rav Yaakov Teitelbaum. He was a very chashuv Yid. He was the Rav in Camp Aguda before Rabbi Belsky was, and he was the Nasi of the Tzirei Agudas Yisrael in Europe, in Wien. And he has a story over, he was Talmud of Rav Meir Arik. And he has a story in his sefer, he writes, where he was kicked out of the yeshiva. One day he walks into yeshiva, and the Rebbe, Rav Meir Arik, him and 4 other guys, and they wouldn't let him into Shiur. The Rebbe wouldn't let him to Shiur. And he asked, why? And they said, Bochrim that go to that event that you guys went to last night, there was a new Rav in town, Rabbi Chayes. I know who he was. He was a from religious Zionist rabbi. You'd call him a Mizrachist, Datilu Umi, one of these. Bochrim that go to such an event, and he had a Hachtorah in town. And some guys from the yeshiva went to hear the Hachtorah. He says, there are no Talmidim of mine. So there was a Talmud, his name was Reb Michol Fruminger, and they asked Reb Michol Fruminger if they could please, just if the Rebbe's asked him just to speak to them a bit. And he was. And they went to Reb Meir Arik, and they said, Rebbe, whatever you tell us, we're makabel. The problem is, how should we know there was anything wrong with that event, with that rabbi? You're our Rebbe. You teach us. Tell us what we should know, what you ever taught us, how we should ever know that there's something wrong with this. They had no idea. Mamish like what's going on today. He said, Dover Poshet, he kicked them out of yeshiva. And they're like, Rebbe, we have no idea what's wrong. You say it's wrong, fine, but how should we know? He let them back into yeshiva, it says, and from then on, he was teaching them about all the deviant movements in Klali Yisrael from Christianity down. He mamish made a seder on it, and to explain to them all the deviant movements. But the only time you're going to find something like this, where for certain people that know, it's a dover poshut and there's nothing to discuss, whereas by other people, they have no idea what's wrong, it's only with Zionism. It's not a generation gap, it's a knowledge gap. There are certain people that mamish know, and others, they could be choshev yidden, they have no idea. This was in Europe. We see what's happening Bizman Hazeh. Let's go somewhere in the middle. I have in front of me the Mechtovim U'Maimorim from Rav Shach. It's Chelik Aleph, Michtov Tezvov. And here, Rav Shach says, he's talking about something that is Yodua for 2,000 years, how Klal Yisrael fights their enemies. They're anti-Semites out there. They're people that don't like us. So everybody knows, Gans Klal Yisrael knows, that whenever one of the Rabbonim needed to do some askonis by a government, they would first learn Parshas Vayishlach, the Parsha where Yaakov met Esav. And we know that Yaakov bowed down to Esav. And the reason he did so was this was a lesson, L'doiris, it says everywhere, that in order for us to fight Esav, we have to be machnia ourselves to him. In Golus particularly, in the Ramban, in the Hakdama, Ramban has a little Hakdama to Parshas, in the Ramban in the Hakdama to the Parsha. If we want Esav to leave us alone, we need to bow to him in Golus specifically. It's a very simple thing. I wrote this in my book. There are different teva of different brias. So everybody knows if you're swimming in the ocean and chas v'sholom you meet a shark, you're supposed to punch him and hit him and kick him, whatever you can do, and maybe he'll leave you alone. But if you're in the forest and you meet a grizzly bear, if you try that mahalach, you're going to become breakfast for him. You don't punch and kick and stomp on a grizzly bear. For him, you play dead. You make believe you're not a threat. So by some creatures, the teva works this way, and by others, it works the other way. The teva of Jews and Goyim, of Yaakov and Esav, works that the more we lay low, the more chance we have of survival. And everybody knows this. If you look in the Chofetz Chaim, however, in Parshas Devarim, Chofetz Chaim al HaTorah, the old one, there's a new Chofetz Chaim al HaTorah, I'm talking about the old one. He says over there, He brings the Ramban about how Yaakov Avinu prepared for three things, and Lamolchomo, the Ramban says it means to run away. Because Lamolchomo you can touch up two ways in English. You can say prepare for a war, which means get your sword, or prepare for war, which means get your sword, or prepare for a war is coming, which means get your passport. And the Ramban says it means get your passport. And Chafetz Chaim said that over there in that little piece, first piece in Parshas Devarim, that Kolzman, we followed the instructions of our Chazal. Baruch Hashem, we survived. Everybody knows the Ness, how Klali Yisrael survived so long. However, Chadoshim Ikarav Bo, there's a new Shita out there. He meant the Zionists. There's a new Shita out there that say we have to abandon the weapons of our father Yaakov and take up the weapons of Esav, the fist. We're going to fight the anti-Semites. We're going to be strong. We're going to, if somebody does something, we're going to make sure he's fired, or maybe we'll kill him, or maybe we'll have an army and we'll go beat them up, or whatever it is. Rachmana litzlan, he says, Rachmana litzlan, bad things can happen with this mahalach. Now, I don't know when the Chafetz Chaim said that. He was nifta 1933. Based on the history, let's just give a ballpark 1920, okay? In 1990, Rav Shach gave this shmooze that I have in front of me. Rav Shach says it's the exact same shmooze, with the exact same makayris as the Chafetz Chaim has, the exact same inyan. How, and there he's talking about Israel, and how they treat their political enemies, and how if Klali Yisrael wants to survive, we can't go around saying that we're going to be strong and we're going to kill everybody and try to scare people away. This is what he says, and he brings the same curse. But then he says, listen to this. So let's assume that between the time the Chafetz Chaim said this and when Rav Shach wrote this, let's assume 70 years. What 70 years? 3 dairis, 2.5 dairis? Rav Shach says, quote, Ach hayoim ledavoinenu, koyev halev, it hurts the heart. Ki af talmidei chachomim, rabbonim, tzadikim, einam chadurim b'havanazu. They do not understand this. Talmidei chachomim, rabbonim, and tzadikim. They don't understand this. Ki yesh lanu derech mishalonu. Michad gisa, on one, we have our own way. What works for the goyim to fight other goyim, to protect themselves from other goyim, does not work for us. We are a different teva. One guy to another guy is like one grizzly bear to another grizzly bear, derech moshel. For us, it's like a human being has to play dead. It's a different teva. It's not the pshad soymech al nes. When you meet a bear and you play dead, it's not soymech al nes, fakert. Al pi derech ha-teva, that's best for you. Klal Yisrael's teva, the teva between Klal Yisrael and goyim, whatever the siba of the sinna of the goyim are, the derech ha-teva is talaylo. And that works for us. It's your best chance at the very least. But Bizman Hazeh, he says, people don't know this. Michad gisa poilim neged ha'umoisim is garim bahem. The Israelis, he says, they do actions against the goyim and they provoke them. V'choishvim letumam, and they think of their naivete. Hein onu yachsonim kamoyhem. We're the same like any other guy. Ve'nenu pchusei dargamehem. We are not less than any of them. V'loma yigrach elkenu. Lahachnea tachas balusam. Why should we bow to them? America yoimer, America tomer kach, v'yanu noimar lehepach. America will tell us one thing, and we'll do whatever we want. But midach gisa, they dance in front of them, the Mayofis dance. It was an old dance that the Goyishal landlord used to make the Jewish rentor, the Jewish soicher, a dance in front of him just for anti-Semitic reasons. Midach gisa, he says, the biggest chanifim in the world. Do you understand what's going on over here? There was a hashkafa that for 2,000 years everybody understood. It was noigeya everyone. I'd like something that wasn't noigeya. The Torah says he doesn't have mitzvahs tuliyas ba'aretz because it's in loy shchiach. There weren't so many people in Eretz Yisrael. Things that weren't shchiach, things are forgotten. But every door, Klal Yisrael feared zich like this. Whoever went for his shtadlus, this is what they did. And now the Zionists said, no, we don't want to do that. And 70 years later, Rav Shach is saying, Talmidei Chachomim Tzadikim and Rabbonim don't know this. Now, not everybody didn't know this. Rav Shach knew this. But you understand what this is? How in 70 years, 50, 70, 80 years maybe, a hashkafa was ripped out of Klal Yisrael, a hashkafa that everybody knew. Rabbonim, Tzadikim, Talmidei Chachomim, that's his lashon, do not know this. Now, in 1990, how old are these Rabbonim, Tzadikim, Talmidei Chachomim? Let's be generous. Let's say they're 50. right? Tzaddikim, Talmidei Chachamim, Rabbonim. If they were 50 in 1990, those same people today are 85. I don't know where anybody here was in 1990, but that means that if you were 1990 and you had a Rebbe who was a Talmid Chacham or a Rav or a Tzaddik, the odds are, or could very well be, he didn't know this. And now you're talking about the Rebbe's Rebbe. It's 35 years since he said this. It's another door and a half. How do you rip a hashkafa out of Klali Yisrael? This is what they did. This is what I call it's a knowledge gap. Michad Gisa, there are people that mamish know, like Rav Shach. There are people, on the other hand, that have no musug of what's going on. And what happened over here? What happened over here is Zionism. It's not the same as any other shmat. It was, Rebbe Liber wrote in the Haskama to my book on this topic, that they were more matzliach than anybody else to inflict their poison, to inject their poison into Erlich Yidden and Klal Yisrael. So how did they do this? What did they do? What is different about this that people mamish don't even understand? Talmidei Chachamim Rabbonim, what did they want, first of all? What did they want? And how did they do it? So part of this is that the way the Zionists have trained people to fight this war, I'm talking amongst the Fruma. The question over here is how this knowledge gap came about. Amongst the Fruma, the way that Zionim have fought this battle, the Fruma Zionim, would invariably, very mistaba rather, leads to this type of gap. If they were to fight for Zionism by providing a case, al pi Torah for Zionism, they would lose. The Mizrachistim have not come up with any excuses. The Dati Lumi, no excuses. Their Torahs are easily disproven. But not only that, if people want to know what Zionism is and what to do about it and the damage it causes, the information is readily available. Readily available. It's mamish black on white. For example, the most frequently asked question that I've been getting regarding the WZO is, what's the difference between voting in the WZO and voting for the Israeli Knesset? And in fact, there were Rabbonim, let's paraphrase Rav Shach, Rabbonim Talmidei Chachamim, that have said this svara, that of course it's mutter because it's the same as the Israeli Knesset. But the truth is, it's mamish not true. If you want to know the answer to this question, start learning the sugya. It's available, as we will see. Rabbi Reuven Grozovsky in Boyas Hazman asks the question, but not the pshat. He asks the question: why should the WZO be usher? The WZO existed before the Israeli Knesset, and everybody knew it was usher. And we all know the Chofetz Chaim said better to close Rov yeshivas than to vote in the WZO. The Chazon Ish said better in World War II. Don't worry, in Shemayim, working with the Zionists, they won't have tainas with you, even bimkom pikuach nefesh, even if it's negeya pikuach nefesh. Now the shaila is, why would the Knesset be mutter? If everybody knows that the WZO and Zionist organizations are usher, why would the Israeli parliament be a yotzim and a klal? And he answers it black on white. This is the aleph beis of the sugya. Yet people are asking. Here's what happened. The way that Zionim have learned how to allow Zionism into the community, because as we will see, the propaganda seeps into the community. The way they have learned to prevent anybody resisting the propaganda is not to fight for Zionism, not to fight against having the propaganda affect the community, because that wouldn't work. All the Gedolim, Shikol Hadas, Dvar Mishnah, no matter what angle you want to take it from, Zionism loses. Instead, they say, Zionism is not Negeya. See that sefer that discusses it? See that those resources where you could get all the information, they're mamish right in front of your face. They're black on white. They're there. Yeah, don't look there. It's not Negeya. It's not Negeya. There's no Zionism nowadays. As we'll see, they've been saying this forever. There's no Zionism. It's not Negeya. The second most frequently asked question that I get. And this, together with the question about the Israeli Knesset, pretty much are roiv. Roiv of the questions are one of these two, is why do I have to know this? So there's all this Torah over there, there's all this Das Torah over there, there's all this that's Nageya, that's available, mamish black on white, but don't look at it. Don't look at it. If you look at it already, then we know what's going to happen. Then you're going to be against Zionism. But the people who are mushba from Zionism don't want you to even know how wrong they are. Now, this was Doiris ago. And now so they're ready to nishbu. Now already they actually believe this, that it's not Nageya. But it started off, don't look at it. And therefore, what happens is that there are people that were not subject to these manhigim, and they learned it. And now they know, it's black on white. And there are people who were subject to this hanhaga, and they followed it, so they don't know. And we're talking Doiris ago. Now it's already a Messiah, either you know or you don't. So what comes out is, imagine there'll be a Masechta Shabbos. And the Machal Shabbos movement are telling people they should be Machal Shabbos. Al Pi Torah, they should be Machal Shabbos. How are they going to deal with that? How are they going to accomplish that? So what they do is, they're not going to tell you, Al Pi Torah, you should be a Machal Shabbos. They'll have propaganda that you should be Machal Shabbos, whatever the propaganda is. What about Kol HaTorah Kula? Masechta Shabbos. That Masechta, don't touch it. Don't take it out of the shelf. There's nothing in there that's Nageya to you. Machal Shabbos, that was in the olden days. By the Sheshes Simei Bereshis, there was a Shabbos. Now the whole thing's not Nageya. There's no such thing as Shabbos. And you don't learn Hilchah Shabbos. You don't know anything about Shabbos. And you leave that Masechta Chas v'Sholom collecting dust. So of course, some people are going to say, Avad the Shabbos, what you don't know about Shabbos. I have to tell you about driving a car on Shabbos. I'm embarrassed to tell you because those people know. And the other people be sitting there, what do you mean? I know nothing about this. And this is the knowledge gap, because the information is mamish available. Here's mamish amoshel. This question that people are asking, what's the difference between the WZO and the Knesset, is open. The Reuven Grozovsky, who was the one that taught the Aguda, Machne, this sugya, he spent so much time on this. This is the question he asks, and this is... But if your attitude to this is, don't bother for Doiris, not now. Don't bother, there's nothing there, it's not Nageya Zionism, there's no more Zionism, you're not going to know anything. And that's why you have Rabbonim and Talmidei Chachamim that think that there's no difference. Avad, you ask them the question, they don't know that there's a sugya. They think, Zionism is a thing of the past, the Aguda joined, so it's the same thing. But the truth of the matter is there's so much there that they don't know. It's not me saying this. Rav Shach, Talmidei Chachamim, Tzadikim, he also adds, and Rabbonim, there are things that we knew for thousands of years that Mamish ripped out of Klali Yisrael. And this is the reason, one of the reasons for the knowledge gap. Because the knowledge is there, right in front of you. If you access it, like Masechta Shabbos, it'll be embarrassing for you to tell people who don't know that such a thing as Shabbos, that you got to keep Shabbos. Like, why do I have to tell you this? It's a davar pashut. Midach Gisa, those people that didn't access the easily accessible, do not know the easily knowable Yediyas, are going to say, I don't understand. I never heard of such a thing. It's not that the Zionists try to defend Zionism or to defend the propaganda by saying Al Pi Torah it is this way, because they have no chance. Instead, this is the Mahalach. Don't open that Masechta. Don't think about it. Don't discuss it. There's no reason. So, of course, somebody who does open it and accesses the black and white Yediyas that are there available for everybody is going to understand that this is a davar pashut. But if you don't access it, and if you follow those manhigim that tell you there's no such thing anymore, either those who b'mezid did this in order to allow the propaganda to have its effects, or those who now were tinoy kishinishbu in this inyan, you're not going to know. And it's only Zionism that's fought like this. If I told you, I know we're going to have a shmooze about the maskilim, nobody's going to say, why do we have to know about maskilim? It's a shmooze. The maskilim bisman hazeh. There are lessons to learn from what the maskilim and how they were matzliach. And nobody's going to say, they're maskilim, what's in Nageya? Stay away from it, don't bother. What's the tachlis? What's the point? But whenever somebody wants to speak about Zionism, what's the point? There's no Zionists nowadays. I wanted to speak about the Tzedukim. Nobody would say that. What are the Tzedukim? What's the Torah Shabbal Peh? Okay, it's Nageya. It's not Nageya's Hilchas Brachas, but it's part of Torah. It's Jewish history, L'chol HaPachas. But Zionism, no. Zionism is the only thing. Don't touch it. Don't talk about it. It's not Nageya. I don't need to. There's no point. And now, when you have Reb Dov Landau saying that what so many Yidden in Klali Yisrael, Rabbonim and Talmidei Chachamim want you to do is a Aveira Chamura Ma'od, that's a quote. And there is no other tzad. He said, I don't know, why are you asking me this? He said, if they wanted you to be Oived Avodah Zarah, would you ask me? This is the knowledge gap. Well, if it was never Nageya, and nobody ever learned about it, so of course if somebody tells you to do something, why shouldn't you do it? And of course they shouldn't think there's a reason not to do it. But if you did, you do have the Yediyas, and the Yediyas are there. You did learn that Masechta, then you're going to know it's an Aveira Chamura Ma'od. It's very Pashut.